chaos theory of compassion. I was chatting with friends the other morning over coffee. The conversation turned to the news and its impact upon us, and how some people we know just will not watch it any longer for fear of being dragged down into a pit of despair. All we ever see is bad news, they say. So the reaction is to turn away in indifference. I've done it myself from time to time, especially if I'm feeling a bit blue. You see, they don't seem to ever report the good news. I've also noticed another response to bad news. People who seem obsessed, almost addicted to it. People who turn on the rolling news whenever a disaster or something unpleasant has happened in the world. This cannot be good for us. And I'm sure that it only feeds into the fear and dread we already have about life. It can prove to us that the world is an unsafe place and people are not to be trusted. It feeds those feelings of suspicion that we can all have as we go about our daily business. It leads to us looking at each other with fear in our eyes. When we feel like this, we are highly unlikely to smile at the stranger. Quite the opposite, I suspect. In fact, if they did smile, I'm sure we would view them with suspicion. I know I have in the past. A friend said to me as we were walking back from the coffee shop that morning that what is needed is some kind of chaos theory of love and compassion. That we need to spread this out into the world. I agree, and I strongly believe that one smile or an act of love from a person in Altrincham can lead to an avalanche or a tidal wave of love in some other part of the world. Now, these weren't his exact words, by the way, but it's what I heard him say. Wonderful words, I thought, from someone who used to be the king of cynicism. By the way, while he may have been the king, I was the emperor. He told me that some small gesture I'd done a while ago had led him to do something similar, and that hopefully that would lead to the other person, another person, doing the same. Now, the acts individually were nothing much in particular, but who knows what kinds of chains of reaction they may eventually lead to. It seems that everything that we do and everything we don't do actually matters. Who knows what chain reactions we are all setting off with every feeling, every thought, every word, every action. By the way, who knows what chain reactions we are setting off by our lack of feeling, our lack of thought, our word, our lack of action too. Everything we do or do not do has an impact on the world in which we live. No one is truly passive, even when they're doing nothing. Of course, there are those who do try to spread the good news. I remember as a child, the news at 10 used to have an "and finally" section at the end of its bulletins. This would tell of a heartwarming story. The comedian Russell Howard has a television series titled Russell Howard's Good News. This is a satirical look at the week's events. Each episode ends with a section called "It's Not All Doom and Gloom." And this also shows a heartwarming or courageous clip from the internet. It's not all doom and gloom. And it's great to see people like Russell making the effort instead of just descending into the lazy cynicism of so many of today's comedians. There is a sadness in this world, but there is also beauty, love, compassion and courage too. It's just a shame that most of the modern media no longer believes that this sells. The news of the world may well have gone the way of the dodo and the dinosaur, but what it traded on is still going strong. Stronger than ever, some would say. Perhaps the real problem is that we have become unreceptive to the good news. Maybe we no longer have ears that can hear. In the parable of the sower, Luke chapter 8, verses 4 to 8, Jesus tells the crowd that the sower throws the seeds on the path, and they were trampled and eaten by birds. while other seed fell on the rocky ground where the roots were weak, and therefore the plants withered and died. Still others fell on thorn, and the thorns grew up and choked the plants. Finally, some fell on good soil, where they thrived and brought forth grain, growing up and increasing 100-fold. The great sages such as Jesus and the Buddha spoke in parables in attempts to help people get to the deeper meaning of their message. These stories told the good news. They wanted the ears that heard to wrestle with what was being said, and then come to a deeper understanding. I believe that in the parable of the sower, Jesus is telling his followers that in order to hear the good news, you need to become receptive to it. I believe that every one of us has the potential for deep compassion, as well as the potential for hatred and extreme selfishness. The key is to feed and develop that compassionate aspects of ourselves, and then we can indeed impact positively on the world in which we live. I believe that the kingdom of heaven is within all of us, as is hell for that matter, and that we can indeed build that kingdom here on earth, or we can build our own living hell here on earth. It really is down to how we all live our lives. The parable of the sower, programs like Russell Howard's, little conversations in coffee shops, smiling at the person that as you pass them in the street, passing on a good turn given to you, can indeed lead to some kind of chaos theory of compassion and love. Start spreading the news. We can change our world today. I invite you now to join with me in a few moments of prayer. O great mystery, help us to experience you here in our lives. Help us to see you as you blow through the branches of the great trees. Help us to feel you as you gust through our fields and our streets. And help us to taste you on the breath of those we hold most dear. Be with us when we are afraid to delve within, when we cannot face ourselves in the glass, when we are paralyzed by our guilt and our shame. Sustain us as we open the windows to our hearts and stand before our world exposed but ready. God of love, open our eyes. Help us to discover that we are not who we thought that we were, that we need not fear our natures. What lies at the centre of our being and all creation is love. Love unconditional. Love everlasting. Love. Love. Amen.